When I was fresh out of university, with a head full of big dreams and an empty bank account, I told myself, if someone else can build an empire, so can I. That statement didn't come from arrogance, it came from desperation. From the deepest hunger to create, to belong, to change my story, that hunger landed me in crypto, not because it was shiny or trendy, because it was ferociously meritocratic. I remember the first time I stumbled across the word crypto. Not because I understood it, but because it sounded like a language only a chosen few spoke. At that moment, I wasn't sitting in a glass tower office with polished leather shoes and a Rolex on my wrist. I was sitting in a cramped apartment on a second-hand laptop, asking myself one simple question: what am I missing that others seem to see so clearly? You see, when you don't come from privilege, your greatest asset is curiosity. Curiosity becomes the fuel that drives you to ask, to explore, to fail, and to learn again. Most people think the journey begins with confidence. It doesn't. It begins with humility. The humility to accept that you don't know, that you are not the smartest in the room, that you may be the last one to arrive at the table, but you can still claim your seat if you are prepared to fight for it. I was not attracted to crypto because of the fast cars, luxury lifestyles, or million-dollar stories paraded across social media. I was drawn because it felt like a level playing field. It didn't ask for my surname. It didn't check my family tree. It didn't care about my accent, the color of my skin, or the passport I held. It was raw, untamed, unfiltered. It whispered a simple message: if you are brave enough to understand me, you can play. And that spoke to me more than any other investment class I had studied before. When I made my first tiny investment, it wasn't courage that drove me. It was fear. Fear of being left behind in a world that was moving faster than my understanding of it. But here's what fear does when you channel it correctly. It forces you to prepare. I read until my eyes hurt. I watched hours of debates, not to be entertained, but to extract insight. I joined online communities, not to impress, but to listen. Every room I entered, I was the quiet one in the corner, absorbing. That's how you grow, not by declaring what you know, but by listening for what you don't. And yes, I made mistakes. Terrible ones. I bought coins because they were trending. I panicked when prices dipped and sold at a loss. I laughed at myself the next day because the market recovered. But those errors, as expensive as they felt in the moment, were tuition fees. That's the price you pay when you're not born with the privilege of someone else footing the bill for your education. I didn't waste those fees. I learned. I kept asking, why did I make that decision? What did I miss? Where was the blind spot? Slowly, the lessons started compounding. Humility is not weakness. Humility is strength disguised. It's what allows you to enter new arenas without arrogance. People often confuse confidence with competence. They show up with loud voices and bold predictions. But markets, especially crypto markets, do not reward noise. They reward understanding, patience, and discipline. Humility taught me that if I wanted to last, I had to master the art of being a student long before I could ever act like a teacher. What many people forget is that the greatest opportunities rarely announce themselves with clarity. They arrive disguised as confusion. They arrive packaged as problems. That's how crypto came to me. The headlines were messy, the debates were aggressive, the market charts looked like heart monitors. And yet, beneath the chaos, I sensed order. Beneath the noise, I sensed possibility. The humility to look beyond what was obvious. That was the beginning of my journey. When you walk into crypto, or into any new frontier for that matter, the danger is believing you're late. That someone else has already taken all the good spots, that you're simply too far behind. I had that thought almost daily, but then I reminded myself, it doesn't matter when you arrive. It matters how prepared you are when you do. And preparation is not about having the most money. It's about having the sharpest mind. That's what humility unlocks. It strips away entitlement and forces you to sharpen your mind. I have seen people with wealth enter this space arrogantly, believing money buys wisdom. They leave poorer, angrier, and humiliated. I have seen ordinary men and women, with nothing more than grit and an internet connection, build portfolios that changed their families' destinies. What's the difference? Humility, the willingness to learn, the discipline to admit mistakes, the courage to start small, learn fast, and grow steadily. So when I look back at my own genesis into crypto, I don't romanticize it as some grand vision. It wasn't. It was a hungry young man staring at a new world and saying to himself, "You may not understand this yet, but you will not allow yourself to be excluded." It was the humility to be the student, the grit to stay in the classroom longer than anyone else, and the hunger to apply those lessons relentlessly. And if there is one truth I hold above all, it is this: greatness does not start with talent. It starts with humility, because humility will take you further than ego ever will. Humility will keep you learning when others get complacent. Humility will keep you grounded when success tempts you to believe you've arrived. That was my genesis, not a story of brilliance, but a story of hunger and humility, and in that space, between hunger and humility, entire empires are built. When I first entered the world of crypto, I realized very quickly that excitement alone is not a strategy. Curiosity can open the door, but it takes a critical mindset to walk through it with clarity. Too many people died, intoxicated by headlines of overnight millionaires, and they never pause to ask the most important question: why? Why is this coin moving? Why is this technology valuable? Why is the market reacting in this way? Without that question, you are not investing. You are gambling. I made a commitment early on that I would not allow myself to be seduced by the noise. Instead of listening to the hype, I learned to interrogate it. Every claim I heard, I challenged. Every prediction I read, I dissected. Not because I thought I was smarter than everyone else, but because I knew that in a space this volatile, blind trust is expensive. Skepticism became my currency, not the kind that closes doors, but the kind that sharpens your judgment. You see, the learning curve in crypto is brutal. It does not flatter you. It does not care how intelligent you think you are. It punishes laziness, exposes arrogance, and magnifies ignorance. The only way to survive is to approach it like a battlefield where preparation decides whether you leave with scars or with trophies. I had to unlearn the idea that every opportunity was urgent. I had to teach myself that missing out on a trade is not the same as losing. It is often the cost of discipline. In the beginning, I made mistakes because I rushed. I believed the urgency of others should be my urgency. When markets pumped, I panicked and jumped in. When markets dumped, I panicked and jumped out. Every loss taught me the same lesson: impatience will always outspend intelligence. So I slowed down. I started building frameworks instead of chasing impulses. Before I made a move, I asked, what is the logic? What is the risk? What is the worst that could happen? And can I survive it? That discipline transformed my approach. There's a story I often tell myself, a story of two investors. One has $10,000 and believes the goal is to double it overnight. The other has $1,000 and believes the goal is to grow it methodically over years. The first one may win quickly, but he loses faster. The second one builds muscle memory. He learns, adapts, survives. The one who survives is the one who wins. That is the mindset I chose, not to chase, but to endure. Not to win today, but to still be standing tomorrow. The critical mindset also demanded that I become a student of history. Technology is exciting, yes, but every boom follows patterns. Markets are driven by human psychology: fear, greed, doubt, euphoria. I studied bubbles, crashes, recoveries. I looked at tulip mania.com madness, stock market collapses, and what I saw was simple. The instruments change, but the behavior does not. Human beings are predictable in their unpredictability. Understanding that gave me a lens to view crypto not as magic, but as a mirror of human nature. This is why the learning curve is not just technical, it is emotional. You can read white papers, study tokenomics, understand blockchains. That is necessary, but if you cannot manage your own psychology, you will destroy yourself in this market. I had to learn to master silence in moments of noise, to hold still when everything screamed move now, to build patience when everyone else was counting profits. That is the difference between survival and collapse. Every lesson I learned in this space was written in red. Red numbers on a screen, red moments of regret, red reminders of what happens when discipline disappears. But each scar taught me resilience. Each mistake forced me to recalibrate. I stopped asking, how much can I make? and started asking, what can I learn from this position? Whether it wins or loses, that shift changed everything. Suddenly, losses were not failures. They were tuition, and tuition always pays dividends if you use the knowledge. Over time, the curve flattened. What once looked like chaos began to look like rhythm. What once overwhelmed me started to make sense. Patterns emerged, logic revealed itself, and I found myself calmer in storms that once terrified me. The lesson is this: knowledge is not given, it is earned. And in crypto, the price of ignorance is heavy. You either pay upfront with time, study, and humility, or you pay later with your money and your pride. What I discovered is that the critical mindset is not about negativity. It is not about dismissing everything. It is about interrogation. It is about asking the hard questions others avoid. It is about refusing to accept surface-level answers. It is about building your own conviction so that when the market shakes, your foundation does not. Because in this game, conviction is your anchor. Without it, you will drift endlessly, pulled by every wave of hype. And so, when people ask me how I manage to grow in a space as unforgiving as crypto, I tell them the truth. I became my own skeptic and my own student. I refused to outsource my thinking. I refused to let someone else's excitement dictate my decisions. I embraced the pain of the learning curve, knowing that every hard lesson was sharpening my edge. In the end, the real investment was never just in coins or tokens. It was in building a sharper mind, a calmer heart, and a stronger will. That is the true return, because money can be lost and made again, but the discipline of a critical mindset, that becomes permanent capital. That is the wealth no market can take from you. The first thing you learn in crypto is not about blockchain, wallets, or exchanges. It's about yourself. The charts don't lie, but neither do your emotions. They reveal you. The red candles will expose your fear. The green ones will seduce your greed. And if you cannot master those two forces, no amount of technical knowledge will save you. Discipline over emotion. That is the law. I learned this the hard way. In the beginning, I was like everyone else, chasing the thrill. My phone would buzz at 2 in the morning, and I would roll out of bed just to check if the market had moved. When it was up, I felt invincible. When it was down, I felt like the world was ending. My mood, my focus, even my energy lived and died on the movement of a chart. That is not investing. That is slavery. Slavery to your own emotions. Discipline taught me to break that cycle. Discipline is not glamorous. It is not loud. It does not shout when the market pumps. It whispers in your ear. Stick to the plan. It reminds you that you set rules for a reason. It tells you that your strategy matters more than your feelings. And once I embraced that, everything changed. Here's the truth. Crypto will always test you. The swings are violent. One day you are a genius. The next you are a fool. The temptation is to believe you are the market, to believe that its rise confirms your brilliance and its fall exposes your stupidity. That illusion is the trap. Discipline is what separates those who play the game from those who get played by it. I started creating strict systems. Entry points, stop, losses, allocation percentages, rules written before emotion could interfere. If a coin fell by a certain percentage, I sold, not because I felt like it, but because the system demanded it. If it rose to a target, I took profit. It's not because I was greedy, but because the plan said so. I removed hope from my vocabulary. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is an emotion disguised as logic. And I'll tell you this, the hardest part is not creating the system. It is keeping the discipline when the storm comes, because storms will come. A sudden crash will tempt you to break your rules and wait just a little longer. A sudden surge will tempt you to throw caution aside and ride it all the way up. Both of those voices are emotions masquerading as wisdom. I silence them by trusting my process more than my impulses. Discipline is also about time, patience. Everyone wants to get rich tomorrow. Everyone wants to post screenshots of 10x returns. But the people who last, the people who build real wealth, are the ones who play the long game. I trained myself to think in years, not minutes. I stopped asking, what can I gain this week? And started asking, where will this decision leave me 5 years from now? That single shift removed half the stress, because when your time horizon is long, The noise of the short term loses its power. Another lesson discipline taught me was detachment. Detachment from the constant need to check. Detachment from the addiction to dopamine. Detachment from the idea that every move had to be right. I learned to be comfortable with being wrong as long as I was disciplined, because a disciplined mistake still teaches. An emotional mistake only destroys. I saw people far smarter than me lose everything because they couldn't control themselves. They chased pumps, over-leveraged, doubled down out of anger, or refused to sell out of pride. Intelligence is useless when emotion takes the driver's seat. You cannot outthink greed. You cannot outsmart fear. You can only discipline them. That's why I say the real battle is never against the market. It's against yourself. Discipline also demanded that I diversify, not because it was exciting, but because it was safe. Emotion tells you to put everything into the hottest coin. Discipline reminds you that protection is power. Emotion tells you to follow the crowd. Discipline reminds you that crowds move fast, but often toward cliffs. This mindset bled into the rest of my life. I realized how much of our decision-making everywhere, business, relationships, career, is driven by impulse. We overcommit when we're excited. We retreat when we're afraid. Rarely do we pause, breathe, and execute the plan we set when our mind was clear. Crypto taught me that discipline is not about restriction. It is about freedom. Freedom from the chaos of your own emotions. And here's the paradox. When you master discipline, you feel less pressure. You stop chasing. You stop fearing. You stop reacting. The market becomes just that, a market. Not a mirror of your worth. Not a measure of your intelligence. Just a system you engage with using your own system. That detachment gives you clarity. And clarity, more than anything, is what brings consistency. So, when I look back at my journey, I don't remember the nights of panic or the mornings of euphoria. I remember the turning point, the moment I chose discipline over emotion, the moment I decided that no chart, no tweet, no breaking headline would shake me from my plan. That was the day I stopped being a victim of the market and started being a master of myself. Because the truth is simple. Money is easy to make and easy to lose, but discipline, that is wealth you carry forever. It does not vanish in a crash. It does not inflate in a bubble. It lives inside you, unshaken. And once you have it, no market can take it away. In this game, nobody wins alone. That's the first truth I had to accept. When I stepped into the world of crypto, I thought it was just about me, my laptop, and the charts. I believed that if I studied hard enough, read enough white papers, and disciplined myself, I could conquer it alone. But the reality is this: isolation is expensive. The fastest way to grow is to plug into a network of people who know more than you, see further than you, and are bold enough to tell you the truths you don't want to hear. The most dangerous position you can take in any new industry is arrogance, the belief that your effort alone will be enough. That's not how the world works. Every major leap in my understanding came because I sat with someone who was already ahead of me. Not someone trying to impress me, not someone trying to sell me a dream, but someone who had scars from the battles I was yet to fight. That's what mentorship really is. It's a shortcut through pain. It's a flashlight in a dark tunnel. It doesn't remove the journey, but it helps you avoid the potholes that swallow the unprepared. When I started seeking mentors, I wasn't looking for cheerleaders. I didn't want someone to pat me on the back. I wanted someone to challenge me, someone to question my assumptions, someone to expose my blind spots. I remember one of the first conversations I had with a seasoned investor. He listened to me explain my strategy, then leaned back, smiled, and said, "That's cute. But where's your risk management?" That sting stayed with me. It forced me to rethink not just my trades, but the way I approached risk in every part of my life. That lesson alone saved me thousands. Networks are not about numbers, they are about quality. Social media fools you into thinking that having 10,000 followers means you have influence. Influence is not likes. Influence is access. Who do you call when you need insight on a new protocol? Who do you reach out to when a project looks promising but you're not sure of its credibility? Who can connect you to the developer not the marketer. That is the power of networks. They collapse time. They turn 10 years of trial and error into 1 year of focused learning. But here's the thing. Networks only work if you contribute. Too many people approach them with a beggar's mentality, always asking, never giving. That's not how real communities function. Real communities thrive on value exchange. If you enter only to take, you will be shut out quickly. I learned to contribute even when I had little. Maybe I didn't have decades of experience, but I had energy, I had curiosity, I had perspective. I asked sharp questions, shared small insights, connected dots others missed, and slowly I earned my seat at the table. Mentorship, too, is not something you demand. It's something you earn. You cannot walk up to someone who has spent decades building credibility and simply ask them to teach you. That's entitlement. What you can do is show your hunger, your discipline, your willingness to learn. You can show that you respect their time by coming prepared. A mentor will only invest in someone who invests in themselves. And when you do earn that relationship, it is priceless, because what they give you is not just knowledge, it's perspective. Perspective that took years to earn, delivered to you in minutes. I discovered that the right mentor doesn't just teach you about crypto or investing. They teach you about decision making, about patience, about discipline, about strategy. They elevate the way you think, not just the way you trade. They don't just tell you what to buy. They teach you how to think about buying. That's a much greater gift. Because coins come and go, markets rise and fall, but the ability to think critically, that never depreciates. The deeper I went, the more I realized that networks are also about accountability. When you are part of a group of serious people, you cannot slack off. You cannot make emotional decisions because someone will call you out. You cannot abandon your system because someone will remind you of the plan you set. That accountability sharpens you. Alone, you can justify your mistakes. Surrounded by high-caliber peers, your excuses collapse. And that pressure is what makes you grow. There is also something profoundly empowering about belonging to a community that dreams bigger than you. Alone, your vision has limits. Surrounded by builders, innovators, and risk-takers, your imagination expands. You begin to see possibilities you never saw before. You realize that crypto is not just about price speculation. It is about reshaping finance, identity, ownership, and community itself. That shift only happens when you expose yourself to people playing at a higher level. Looking back, the best decisions I made were rarely mine alone. They were informed by conversations, shaped by debates, tested by mentors, and refined by peers. Every breakthrough came from the collective intelligence of a network that refused to let me remain average. That's the real power of networks and mentorship. They lift you from where you are to where you could be, faster than you ever imagined. So I say this with certainty. If you want to succeed in this space, stop thinking like a lone wolf. Wolves only survive in packs. Find your pack. Find the mentors who scare you a little, who intimidate you with their wisdom, who stretch you beyond your comfort zone. Surround yourself with people whose very presence demands that you level up. And when you do, bring something to the table, share, contribute, build, because the currency of a network is not money, it is value. In the end, what I gained from my network and mentors was not just knowledge of crypto. It was a higher standard for myself. It was a reminder that iron sharpens iron, that greatness is contagious, and that no one builds empires alone. The market may be digital, the tools may be technical, but the journey is deeply human. And without the right people in your corner, you will always be fighting uphill battles you were never meant to fight alone. The first time I heard people talk about crypto, the conversation was always the same: money. How much this coin went up, how quickly that token doubled, how some unknown teenager became a millionaire overnight. It was intoxicating to listen to, but also misleading, because if all you see is profit, then you have missed the real story. The real story is not about chasing numbers on a screen. The real story is about building value that lasts when the hype fades, when the charts cool down, when the noise dies out. Profit is easy. Value is hard. Anybody can get lucky once. Anybody can stumble onto a hot trade and cash out big. But luck doesn't compound. Hype doesn't sustain. When the music stops, what remains? That's the question most people never ask. They're obsessed with short-term gains, but blind to long-term purpose. And that blindness is why so many enter this space with hope, but leave with nothing. When I shifted my focus from profit to value, everything changed. I stopped chasing the next pump and started studying the teams behind the projects. Who are these people? What problem are they solving? Is there real adoption? Is there genuine innovation? Because if you want to know whether something will endure, you don't look at the chart. You look at the utility. Show me the value, and I'll show you the future. This mindset forces you to think bigger than yourself. It's not just about how much money you can make. It's about what impact the project has. Is it giving access to financial tools for people who have been excluded? Is it enabling creators to own their work? Is it reshaping industries that are broken and unfair? That is where true opportunity lives. Because when you align with value creation, you're not just speculating, you're investing in transformation. I remember one conversation that stayed with me. A friend asked, "Why do you waste time on coins that don't move fast?" My answer was simple, because movement without meaning is just noise. You can chase 50% swings every day and still end up with nothing. Or you can anchor yourself in projects that build ecosystems, create adoption, and solve problems, and you will still be standing when the short-term traders have vanished. Value creation also requires patience. Building anything worthwhile takes time. A company doesn't become world-changing in 6 months. A protocol doesn't reshape industries in a year. But people in this space treat every dip like death and every pump like resurrection. That's emotional investing, not intelligent investing. Value doesn't operate on your schedule. It unfolds in its own time. If you can't wait, you can't win. The irony is this: when you chase only profit, you often lose both profit and value. But when you chase value, profit follows naturally, because value attracts users, builds trust, and scales. Look at the projects still standing after years of volatility. They didn't survive because of hype. They survived because they built something people needed, and need always outlives noise. But value creation isn't just about the projects you invest in. It's also about the role you play. Are you just another speculator, or are you contributing to the ecosystem? Are you educating others, building communities, supporting innovations, challenging scams? Are you helping to shape a space that is sustainable, fair, and empowering? If all you do is take, you will never build wealth that lasts. But if you contribute, your value compounds far beyond your portfolio. I began to see myself not just as an investor, but as a builder in my own way. Sharing knowledge, connecting people, amplifying credible voices, exposing bad actors. That is value creation too. Every time you help someone avoid a mistake, every time you introduce someone to an opportunity that empowers them, you are creating value. And the universe has a way of paying back those who give more than they take. Another truth is this: value creation protects you from the madness of the market. When the market crashes, the profit chasers panic because they have no anchor. But if you are aligned with value, you stay calm. Because you know the fundamentals remain, the innovation continues, the need still exists. Prices are temporary, value is permanent. That clarity allows you to endure storms others cannot. And let's not forget, value creation is the difference between legacy and lottery. Profit buys toys, value builds legacies. The person who cashed out millions in a bull run and wasted it has a good story for a few years. The person who backed projects that changed industries has impact for generations. One leaves footprints in the sand, the other carves monuments in stone. Which one do you want to be? I chose value because I refuse to live for moments when I can live for meaning. I chose value because I know that profit can vanish, but value compounds. I chose value because I believe the greatest wealth is not in what you keep, but in what you create. So when people ask me today what advice I'd give to anyone starting this journey, I tell them, stop asking, how much money can I make? Start asking, what value can I back? What value can I build? What value can I leave behind? Because in the end, profit is applause, value is impact, and applause fades, but impact echoes long after you are gone. So to you, yes, you watching or listening right now, your path into crypto doesn't require a trust fund. It requires curiosity, discipline, discernment, and a purpose bigger than your portfolio. Ask better questions. Build better bets. Commit for the long haul, and when the world doubts you, let your work, your learning, your integrity, your smart moves speak back